Hello. If you're watching this video, you're probably interested in learning how to skin and tan and preserve a raccoon that's been picked up off the side of the road, or any animal for that matter. This is actually, if you can believe it or not, a pre-COVID raccoon. I finished this mounting this raccoon right during the first lockdown in March of 2020. So it's lasted me a few years, and it's a pretty nice specimen, picked up off the side of the road close to my suburban town of Mason, Ohio. Before I start the contents of this video, I'd like to provide 4 caveats. The first caveat is be legal. It's not legal in every state to pick up roadkill off the side of the road because of public health concerns, etc. In the state where I currently am at college, it is legal as long as you have a hunting license, and I do have a hunting license. Everything in this video was done legally, and you must check your local laws and ordinances before you go out and try something like this. The second, along with that, is be safe. Raccoons and any wild animal can carry any number of zoonotic diseases and parasites, including but not limited to rabies, bovine tuberculosis, tapeworms, Ascaris roundworms, fleas, ticks, and tetanus. I've studied these in depth, and although I am by no means a medical doctor, I know what safety precautions I have to take in order to avoid contracting these. And if you were to do this, you should also study this in depth. Your state's Department of Natural Resources will have a page on zoonotic diseases and how to avoid them. Third, don't be an idiot. I am sitting in my college dorm right now, but I did almost none of the process of this video in the college dorm. The only thing I did was I brought the hide back after the tanning solution had been applied, and it could be considered sterile, and it was just stretched and dried for a few days, and there was no chance of it smelling or rotting or being a public health hazard. Don't be an idiot. Don't skin animals on your college campus or in your dorm or in any other place where people regularly go. Be safe and don't be an idiot. Finally, as you can imagine, this video is going to contain some graphic material, and those who are sensitive should maybe not watch this video. I will put a time card showing the 4 different sections that we're going to go through, which is skinning the animal, fleshing the animal hide, thinning the animal hide and dry scraping it to remove more membranes, and finally applying the tanning solution and turning it into leather. And you can look at that time card, and if you're particularly sensitive, you should probably skip past the first part of skinning the animal. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy this video, I hope you find it educational, and I hope it opens your eyes to some of the beautiful things that can be made out of God's creation that He has provided, and how we can connect with a part of our past, of that this is something that people did, tanning hides for thousands of years. Let's connect with our past and see a very useful skill that can really turn something ugly like roadkill into something beautiful like this. I hope you enjoy. This is the part where we have to remove the tail, pull the tail kind of out of its sheath. The rest of the body is not going to allow you to grab it and pull the skin down if it's still attached to the tail. So what I'm doing is I'm going in here and I'm working my finger around, using my finger to separate the fat and connective tissue that connects the tail to the hide. Once I get all the way around, I should be able to just pull the tail out. Then it starts to come out in bigger pieces at a time. Kind of like this.
That's great.
So
it looks like a rat now.
Yeah, it does look like a rat. I think we can just start pulling.
That sound.
Take your fist and work it.
You can just like take it off like a shirt, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh!
Oh!
We've separated. So we keep moving down. Eventually there will be the eyes as well. It's often helpful to stick your hand all the way up the inside of the skin so you can get very precise control of the skin here. Because the head is the part, like if you were made to make a coonskin cap or something, the head is what people are going to see and look at. So you really don't want to mess it up here. So you want to get extra control that way.
Oh yeah, there's the eye.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so you go real slow, you just go all the way around the eye without cutting through the eye slit. So otherwise it's going to look really weird if you try to make something out of it.
That does look so crazy.
It's very creepy. It's very creepy. Remove the extra cartilage later.
And there we go. Looks like a really sad dog.
Mm-hmm.
Would you look at that?
Get his arms and arms right side out.
Okay.
Hi, today we're going to show you how to flesh a raccoon hide. This is a fleshing beam. It's a random piece of, excess milled lumber. And we filed down the end a little bit so that it's kind of like the edge of an ironing board. The idea being that we slip the hide over this and it holds on to it for us while we're fleshing the hide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our raccoon hide that's been in the freezer. It's been nicely salted on the inside so that hopefully the fat is a little tougher and easier to take off. And I'm going to carefully stick my hand inside the hide to just open it up a little bit. And then we will take the entire thing and slip it over our fleshing beam all the way up to its head.
Are we doing it like that or the other way around?
Yeah, I'm just checking to make sure it fits first. Yeah, that's pretty good. Alright, so now I'll turn the hide inside out.
Yummy.
Yeah, you did a good job salting this.
Oh, thanks.
Make sure the arms are actually turned like inside out so you can flesh them as well.
Oh, yeah.
So we're gonna have to find a way to keep that still.
I can hold it on the back.
You'll see now how it neatly holds the head, holds it all still, so that we can work and flesh the fat off. So the way we're going to go about this is we're going to take our fleshing knife here. You can see the blade is slightly concave. It's not intended to be super sharp. It's sharp enough to cut you if you're not careful. But the idea is, as I take this and lean it up against my plastic apron here, just get this to stay still. And I'm going to just very gently, I'm trying to make the force go this way, not this way. I don't want to cut it. And you can see, because that fat has been salted, it's coming off a little bit easier. And just use the sharp edge to start scraping it off. A raccoon is a very, very fatty animal. It can take a long time to do this properly. And sometimes what you need to do is flesh it once, salt it again, and then flesh it again to remove as much as possible. Otherwise, the hide won't tan evenly. As you can see here, as the fat and flesh starts being removed, you can see the blue hide underneath. A blued hide is one that has all the fat scraped off and is ready for the next step of a saltwater bath and washing before the tanning process. You can see here how Lauren is very just gently using the sharp edge of the fleshing knife, directing the force down toward the end and not into the hide itself to scrape the multiple layers off. There's usually there can be 2 or 3 layers here. On the top, you can see here there's still some flesh. The pink layer, that's the first layer. The second layer is the fat layer. And the third layer is what I can only describe as like really tough connective tissue that's right next to the hide. As you get in closer, as you see this part of the hide that's been blued, you can actually see the hair follicles. And that's how you know you've gone far enough, is when you start to see the hair follicles. Fleshing animal hides is great fun and entertainment for all ages.
Do you want a candy?
Well, I'm back home in southern Ohio. I go to college in Pennsylvania. It's actually quite a bit warmer down here than it is in Pennsylvania right now, which is nice. And I've got the skin that I brought back from Pennsylvania, and I'm going to process it a little further and then take it back so a friend of mine who wants it can continue learning how to tan it and do the final tanning process. One problem is I forgot my fleshing knife in Pennsylvania. So I guess I'm going to be using this kitchen knife, which is what I've used in the past before I got a fleshing knife, and it works okay. As you can see, this hide has been caked in a fairly heavy amount of salt for the last month or so. The idea being that when I now flesh it a second time and scrape that salt off, as much fat as possible will come with it. Here is one of the arms that's been turned inside out. The armpits, which are located right here, are one of the thinnest parts on any animal, and the skin around the arm is not particularly thick either. So when we fleshed this last time, we intentionally left flesh and fat on the arm because we didn't want to risk pushing through it with the force of the fleshing knife. Now that this has been sitting in salt for a month, instead of taking the fat off with a knife, I can physically tear it off because it's coagulated just enough that I can pull it off in these long strips without actually having to use the knife on it. That way, we don't risk making holes in the arms or under the armpits, which we would have to sew up by hand later. At this point, I'm going to do something that traditional folks would consider probably cheating, and it probably is. I'm going to use this power tool, which is a drill with a wire brush on it, to try to scrape as much remaining flesh and fat off of the hide as possible. The bristles are stiff, but they're not so stiff that they'll tear the hide or cut through it, and they will grab extra fat and pull it off as I use it. You can see here, any fat that's left hasn't necessarily come off, but it's been made into little strips. Once I put this in salt again, those strips will dry out, and I'll be able to scrape them off easily. The last thing I need to do today is I need to run my knife inside the tail and split the tail open. Then I will nail this to a board and let it dry out for a few more days, and then come back and work on it again. So here's the tail after it's been split down the middle, and I went ahead and split the entire hide down the middle as well. You can see we're doing pretty well. See here it's pretty well blued, but up here we still got some fat on the thickest part of the hide right here. We'll deal with that once it's dried out a little bit more. But let's take a look at how it's looking so far. Obviously it hasn't been washed yet, but it's turning out to be a very nice hide so far. As you can see, I've nailed the hide down to a board. It's getting kind of cold out here, and I think I'm going to be done for the day. But the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to massage some borax into the hide to help dry it out and to preserve it until I can do the next step with it. Alright, that is all for tonight. I'll come back and scrape it again tomorrow, and every day I'll come back, scrape the borax off, scrape as much fat off as possible, and repeat it for as long as I can while I'm here. Make sure I remove as much fat as possible. Raccoons are second only to bears in the amount of fat that's in their hide, so if you really want a good hide, you got to take the time to do this multiple times. This here is the pile of coagulated fat and salt that I removed today. Imagine if you had left that on the hide and tried to tan it as it is. That fat would have still be sitting there, and it would have let the hide rot over time. Hello everyone, we're back one day later. I'm going to dump off the borax onto this tray here, and I'm going to go over it with the wire wheel again. If it's dry enough, I'll actually start chiseling some of the dry fat off of it. And I'm just going to keep doing this every day for a couple days. Now I've gone over it with the wire wheel in the other direction. You can see at the back here, all this fluffy stuff is little globs of fat that are stuck to the borax. That's why I use the borax, because it helps the fat to come off a little easier. Now I've got a fairly standard wood chisel here, and all I do is I hold the chisel at a very low angle, and I apply some pressure. You can see that like these fluffy little carpet pieces that are coming up from the wire wheel are dry enough that the edge of the chisel actually cuts them off after I move along. This way I can very efficiently remove any fat that's still stuck to the hide, as well as make the hide a lot softer. Kom kleinhond. Kom ons kyk na die wasbeertjie. Hey, wat dink jy? Kijk, wat is dit? Wat is dit? Is jy bang? It's now the 4th day that the hide has been in borax. I'm going to dump the borax off as before, pull the nails out of the tail, and scrape it again and see if we see any significant difference in how dry the hide is or how much fat is left. You can see that the tail is still very wet and fatty compared to the rest of the body. This always happens because the tail is so narrow. It's very difficult to get in there and flesh it properly without removing any of the hairs. And with any hide you do, it's basically a toss-up as to whether or not the tail is going to come out well. I think for this one, if I would cut the tail off right about here, this part of the tail would come out well. So we'll see what we do when we tan it in the final process. But the rest of it is looking very good. Alright, it's now day 5. I think I'm pretty much done with thinning this hide at this point. I might go over it with a sander, like an electric sander, just to smooth it out a little bit more. But we are almost at the point, I think, where I want to rehydrate and wash this hide. Then once the hide is rehydrated, I'll stitch up a few of these goof-ups that I made while I was thinning the hide, and then it will be ready for the final step of tanning once I take this back to my college friends. Here's what it looks like at the moment. Again, obviously not washed. Still looks pretty nice. Unfortunately, the tail, this part of the tail is kind of ruined. I'm going to have to cut it off about here. But you'll still have about a 4-inch tail on this if you want to make a coonskin cap out of it. Now I'm going to give this hide probably the first and only bath that it will ever have. Not too bad for a raccoon that was picked up off the side of the road. It's dark outside, but we have to start working on this. Hide still very nicely blued. I think I'm going to cut off some of the little parts that have holes in them. And then I will show you the tanning solution that we're using and the process we're going to use to tan this. This is the hide tanning formula that I use. Before you use it, you have to heat it up a little bit, so I'm just going to put it in some hot water until the inside is pretty much warm.
Well, we bought that at Sam's Club. I remember that.
You rolling?
Alright, so this is Lauren's hide, so she's going to do the final step. What we're going to do is I'm going to apply a very liberal coat of this hide tanning formula to this. She's going to take her hands, we don't have gloves, so we have plastic bags, and she's going to massage it into the hide, gently but firmly. Every square millimeter of this hide needs to have tanning formula on it, especially up by the head, inside the nose, those sorts of things. When the solution starts to soak in, I'll add more, and we'll keep adding more until I don't think we need to add any more. So we get a nice even tan. So I'll kind of start up here. It's this nice orange color. It smells kind of citrusy, kind of like an orange extract or something.
Looks like caramel.
It does. All right, massage that in all over it.
I assume you gotta like press it in here.
Yeah, it'll start to absorb by itself, but just to make sure that there's full coverage all around the hide. To be glad we're using this and not the animal's brains. That's how traditionally it was done, was with the brain of the animal.
Hey, but he did it with the brain. You get to lick your fingers when you're done.
You still videoing?
Yeah, I'm videoing. Sorry, it's up and down, not side by side, so it's gonna look a little
All of the videos.
little found footagey or something. Look at that technique.
Perfect. Not a single
Walmart
mistake.
bag technique.
100% efficiency too.
It's called the hunched over barbarian.
Yeah, inside the nose, very good.
Probably looking pretty good, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll wait a couple minutes, and then we'll do that one more time. So we don't have to film the next one. So. All right, so now it's all covered in this solution. I'm gonna fold it up, skin on skin, and then we will leave it kind of sitting in the goopy solution for 24 hours. And then after that, as it starts to dry, we'll stretch it a little bit more every day. And as it dries, it'll start to turn that tan leather sort of a color. Okay, it has been about 72 hours since we put the tanning solution on the hide, and it's starting to dry out, and now it's time to start stretching it. So I'm going to start stretching it here, and as I start stretching it, you're going to see before your eyes how the color of the hide starts to change. How neat is that, huh? So as you're stretching it and pulling it, the dried fibers are coming apart, and it's turning that nice tan leather color that we expect it would. It's not totally dry yet, so not all of it is turning a tan color yet, but it definitely is really starting to come to life to that hide that we've been waiting for so long. So we'll just keep doing this every day, maybe even a couple times a day, for the next few days until it's completely dry and soft. You may notice I am doing this in the dorm. Don't worry, the hide is completely sterile at this point. It's been in a pretty acidic tanning solution for several days now, so don't worry about that. That's all for now. We'll do this a little more later today. And here's our final product. This part I pulled a little bit too hard and it tore, so I'm going to have to sew that up. But otherwise, this is completely sterile. It's been completely turned into leather. One additional step you can do is you can, rub it around a tree or a post or something to get it even softer, because it can turn stiff if you just leave it as it is. But this is ready for, just be combed out, make sure none of the fur is in knots, and then made into something like a coonskin cap.